Welcome to the Sear Show. Join us as we explore medicine, health, mental health, mindset, and fitness, guided by lifelong seeker of knowledge, Sifu Raphael. He will lead us on a transformative journey with groundbreaking insights and extraordinary guests from around the world. Together, we'll dive into the latest holistic approaches to well-being and the profound connections between mind, body, and soul. Sifu Raphael's expertise in positive thinking, resilience, and personal growth will inspire you to reach new heights. Get ready for the Sear Show. It's time to embrace a brighter, healthier, and more empowered future.
5,
Good morning, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So today we want to talk about team leadership, and I think that
Yeah.
what I understand is that you homeschool your two boys, and that right there is team leadership, because I'm sure there's so many different facets that you have to go through, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of navigating. Definitely
Yeah.
with they have just recently kind of developed very different personalities and interests, whereas when they were a bit younger, they were a bit more similar, and so it was slightly easier. And so now that they're getting older and heading in different directions, and one's heading into almost teenagehood and the other one's just enjoying being little, it's it's fun navigating and having the conversations you need to have and pulling them up on the things that they need to have to do and think about. So yeah, it's definitely team leadership.
True leadership. So let's talk about team leadership, because it's about having everybody on the same page, if you will, correct?
Yeah, as much as possible. It's getting a team engaged is it's vital for anything that you want to do with your teams, and so moving forward together is much easier than the leader being at the front trying to drag, or even being behind and trying to push. It's kind of, you need to walk together, and what that requires is knowing where everyone's at and knowing who's strong at what and who needs what at different times. And so it's very much about knowing your team and moving together, because if one struggles behind, everyone struggles behind. So you're stronger if you can keep everyone in the same place.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's everybody not only has to be on the same page, but it's almost like the heartbeat, right? The synergy that every team member has to be part of. It's almost like a moving organism, if you will, right?
Yeah, very much so. And a lot of that comes down to culture, and the leader sets the culture, but the team, they exemplify and they show what true culture is actually showing up. And so that heartbeat comes about, and you can beat together when you know what you are all working towards, when you've got the same mission, when you behave the same way in the same situations. So culture is all about speaking the same language, behaving in a way that's appropriate, behaving in the way that's expected by the group. And so when you have a strong culture, that, you can move together. I love that picture of the heartbeat of it's the lifeblood. Your culture is your lifeblood when you're a team. And if you've got strong, positive culture, then you'll be healthy. But if there's any toxicity, if there's any misalignment, then heartbeat becomes irregular, and that's not healthy.
Right. Then you need a angioplasty or so forth. Um, one of the things that I'm thinking when we talk about culture is people. You may have a team with people who are part of a different culture in their personal lives.
Mm,
You may have somebody in the
yeah,
Indian culture, somebody in the Chinese
yeah,
culture, somebody in the American culture, somebody in the European culture, somebody in the African. So when we think about teams, it's about letting go of our hangups, if you will, or our way of being and creating a different culture where we can all work together. And even some of the habits that our own personal cultures bring, we may have to put them aside in order to transverse, if you will, into this new formed culture, which is a team of focusing on the same subject.
yeah. I agree to a point. I think
Okay.
part of leading well is being able to bring what everyone brings to the table and integrate that in. You can't, if you pull someone completely away from what they know and who they are, then their personal purpose and their personal connection to what you're doing within your organization gets lost. And the moment you lose your personal connection, that's when we get what Gallup's Strength Finders has been calling quiet quitters, where they do the job, but they just do the bare minimum, and they don't speak up when something's wrong, and they don't point out what could be better. They don't put the extra effort in. They don't strive to be better. So if we disconnect people's personal culture from everything, then that's dangerous. So I do agree. There are things that we do need to leave behind. There's things, there's habits. I live in a different culture. I live in Indonesia, but I'm Australian. And so there's
Mm,
things about my culture that I have to put aside in certain situations so that I can respect and honor the culture that I'm living in, and my family. My husband's Indonesian. So living and being part of a different culture, there are things that you need to lay aside. But there's also a lot of myself that
mhm.
I bring to the table that enhances my family and enhances where I am. And so if I completely disconnect from my personal culture, that's not going to help anybody. So I think it's the same in a team is, yes, there are definitely things that we need to do to balance out, I guess, and to make sure that the whole team can operate together, because there are tendencies to be clashes and things like that. But when we bring what we have from our culture into our team space and the leader navigates that well, and I think that's where strong leadership is really important, and being able to recognize when there are cultural things going on that may need to be dealt with or just addressed. Um, that's part of who they are, so it can't be completely taken out. But yes, there is a new culture. It is a new culture, and you're bringing in people from all over the place to create that new
Mhm.
space and create something that serves others through our businesses and our
Yeah.
organizations.
No, I love, and thank you for clarifying that. And that's basically what I meant, that we can't stop being who we are in order to bring
Yeah,
something to the table, if you will, because
yeah,
it's the uniqueness of every individual. Because if everyone thought exactly the same way, we would be stuck, right? We would be stuck. What kind of a
be so
team would we
stuck.
have if everybody, all they know how to
You're
do is turn the
boring.
switch on and off, right? That's all they know how to do is turn the switch on and off. We need somebody to be able to say,
Yeah,
okay, turn it on. Somebody to say, okay, we need to go over here. So there is that uniqueness
yeah,
that we all bring because of our culture, because of the way we grew
yeah,
up. But we do have to adapt to this new culture of a team, because maybe here's the other thing, we may have been part of a different team and a different culture, a different way of doing things, and now we have to
yes,
adapt to the culture of this new team. Maybe the other team did it
yeah,
one way and it worked for that team or it worked for that project. And you could even be in the same company, but now you're working on a totally different project, right? And how do we learn,
Yeah.
or how do we bring somebody who maybe was a superstar, a rock star
Mm-hmm.
in another part of the organization, but now we're bringing them to our team? How do we get them to fold in, if you will, fold to become part of the unit?
It's a really great question. It's
Mm.
so when someone new comes in, a leader's first priority and what we work on first when I'm working with teams is getting to know your team. So not just the around the water cooler type conversation, not that light chit chat. That's important. But what I mean when I say getting to know your team, I mean, how do they learn? How do they respond to communication? How do they communicate? And once we learn about them as a person and about how they operate, then we've got some basis to fold them in. If we just straight away, and I had this experience, it was I took on leadership of a new team a long time ago, and I was a lot younger and a lot more naive. And I came in, they hadn't had a team leader before. They were kind of a couple of people that did their role, and they just did their thing. And then I got asked to come in and lead, and I just came in like a boss and decided that I would just tell them what to do, and this is how we were doing things. And it caused a clash with one of the guys, and he left. And it was a really big eye-opener to me that you can't come in gung-ho and try and change people. These guys had a certain way of doing things, and I was trying to change things straight up without getting to know them, without getting to know what they do. And so a team leader, their first role, first and foremost, is to get to know your team so that you then know how to navigate those tricky situations. This guy had an attitude problem. It wasn't all me. He also was just like, I don't want a leader, I don't want a boss in this space. But I couldn't address those attitudes because I didn't know him well enough to approach it properly. And I didn't approach him properly. And so when I asked him to talk, he just went nah and left. So as a leader, knowing your team is just first foundation. And then from there, that's when you can start adjusting, and you notice how they work. And if it doesn't quite fit in with the culture, then you can have those conversations and you can bring it up, and you exemplify first. As a leader, you always set the example, and then you've got the rest of the team as well setting the example of the culture. And if you have a culture of open communication, of safety, where you've created a space where they feel safe to open up and share when something's not quite right, then the team members amongst themselves can also feel safe to talk to each other and to say, hey, it's not quite what we do around here. So yeah, creating a safe space, creating a space of communication that you'll bring someone and fold them in real quick if you've got that strong culture already within your team. And then once you get to know them and you know how to address issues as they come up.
Yeah, I love that, because the more we're talking about culture, the leadership, the leader, it's themselves, whether it's male or female, doesn't matter. But I think it's also mindset, right? When we have to come in as far as who we're dealing with. I read about a company that they were losing so much money, the company closed. Someone wanted to do exactly what that company was, and guess who they hired? Everybody that failed. They hired
I think I
every
may have read that same
single,
story.
yeah, probably. They hired the same exact people, but when we consider the fact of why they hired them, one is because they knew how to do the job. What they did differently is they trained them differently. And then they also gave them the space to be who they were. So training, I think, is one of the most important parts of being in a great team. And then the other one is to be heard, right? That's what somebody wants to be in a team. And if they feel like they're part of the team and all they get is Charlie Brown's teacher speaking, blah, 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 and then they get nothing. They never get their words in. They never get their opinions. Why would they want to stay, right? So I think that the success to that company was because of training and listening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for a coaching style of leadership, as opposed to a completely managerial, more of an old school style. So coaching leadership brings a culture of discussing. So obviously as a leader, you need to bring the top vision of where you're going as a team, but then there's layers to the vision, there's layers to the goals, and you can bring in the team on that journey and have that discussion with them and bring them along. And in those conversations, you can then say, okay, we've decided this together. Now, what are you going to take responsibility for? And then the team goes, oh, I get to be part of this. And they feel so much more connected to what's going on. And so, yeah, that training and making sure that they feel safe and like they know what to do when something goes wrong. Like, what's going to happen when I make a mistake? As a leader, we need to make them feel safe. And that all comes through that training and that coaching. And having that coaching mentality is you're asking questions rather than saying, this is what you do. Right. You're talking it through with them, and all those, it brings, they feel like they belong to the team and they feel heard in that space. So, yeah, I really love that.
Right. And it also, for me, what I'm listening also to is that you want to guide them to the answer you already know. You want to, so it's their idea, right? Even though you already know the answer, but if you come in and you're blurting out the answer to the question, they're gonna feel like they're not part of the conversation, right? I think that happens with.
Well, think about who we are as human beings. We don't like being told what to do. No. Children do not like being told what to do. And as adults, we're very much still like children. We don't like just being going, this is what you have to do. We want to be part of the conversation. That's why kids say, why? Why do I have to do that? And if we don't explain to them, that's when they disengage and they don't want to be part of the conversation anymore. It's the same with our teens. If we just tell them and they don't see any reason why, like Simon Sinek, start with the why. It's so important. We have to know why we're doing things. It's who we are as people. So, yeah, coming in and going, this is how you do it without that conversation. And you know what? Sometimes as leaders, we don't know. We actually don't know the answer. And so having that conversation, asking questions, you bring out so much gold that it's that collaborative approach to finding the best solution, not just my solution as a leader.
Right. Yeah. So what is the responsibility of a team leader when something goes wrong?
It's their responsibility. It is a team responsibility, but it does fall to the leader, and the leader needs to take that responsibility and to, because they are the leader. Things go wrong, and yes, there can be somebody that needs to be to take responsibility for their personal actions, and if they've done something that's not okay and in breach of contract or in breach of culture, then that needs to be addressed, obviously. But as the leader, they then need to take responsibility to bring correction, to bring adjustment where it's needed. So if something goes wrong, you need to evaluate that and say, okay, what happened there? Was that a culture issue? Was that a procedures issue? Was it not clear enough when we trained that this is what needs to happen? There is definitely a level of responsibility that the leader needs to take in every situation, at least to take action moving forward, to not make the same mistakes again, to not allow the same thing to go wrong again. We've got to learn. Otherwise, the same thing will keep happening. And this is a tricky thing when you watch, say, a manager that hasn't been trained well in how to manage a team. Often what happens is someone's really good at their job, and then they get promoted into a management role without training in how to lead. And so then they jump in and try their best, but their team end up leaving. And the same, it happens again and again and again. They're not taking responsibility for their lack of leadership skills, and there may be some responsibility further up that they didn't get the training that they need. But ultimately, the leader needs to take responsibility to take some action moving forward. So I think it's almost equal responsibility. Like where it went wrong, that person needs to take responsibility for their actions, but the leader also needs to make sure that they're taking the responsibility that they need to, just at least fixing something moving forward.
I think we're talking about communication, aren't we?
Yeah.
If you think about it, because the upper management who put somebody in the leadership position didn't communicate to say, do you need training, or should we give you training before we put you in this position? Because what happens is somebody, it's almost like an emergency happens and they're like, well, who's going to step up? Okay, good. That's it. You're done.
Yeah.
And we don't train you anymore.
Yes.
And it's okay to step up in a situation where it's needed. But just because you stepped up doesn't mean you know how to do it. You probably said, I'll try it, right?
Yeah.
But afterwards, you need that continued training. And this is why companies who don't invest in training their managers wind up losing, and millions of dollars sometimes, because it's that, they think, oh, well, this, if I bring in a coach and that coach costs $100,000, wow, that's going to hurt our bottom line. Meanwhile, if they don't bring the coach, it's going to cost them $2 million. Hello?
That's right.
So, right,
Yeah.
we got to think about that, because...
But it's a quick fix mentality, right? Like we go, oh, I can see someone who's got potential. Let's fix the hole. Let's patch it up, and that'll be right. It'll be okay. Rather than looking long term and going, okay, so long term, is this fixed? Is this patch going to stick, or are we going to roll through managers like there's no tomorrow? And you lose so much money every time you lose a person, because then there's more training and then there's more. You just lose productivity, everything. It costs so much to lose people. And you either lose your managers or you lose the staff because they're not managing well. So it's that lack of long-term investment. Like you're saying, like, yes, it's going to cost a lot now, but it's going to cost you more later.
Well, it's also not only your managers or your lower employees, but it's also going to cost you in customers, right?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts. A lot of moving parts.
It all flows. So I started out wanting to work with individuals within the teams. That was kind of my first focus when I started my coaching journey. And I quickly realized that if I don't work with the leadership as well, then they can push as much as they like going up. But if the leader doesn't meet them halfway, then you're going to lose all that value. Whereas if you work with the leader and it flows down, and working with the team, then you've got this well-rounded deal where you're all moving forward in the same things, and you're doing it together and you're working together. So it all flows down. It's all ripple effect. Whatever happens at the top will go all the way through the team and then out to the people that you're serving, your clients, your customers, everybody. Impacts everybody.
Yeah, one of the things that I was talking to a friend of mine, and he will not work with a company if the upper management doesn't sit in on it. The reason being is because it flows down. And if the top people think it's beyond them, then it truly is beyond them. And he goes, I'm going to waste my time, and my reputation is going to go with it as well. So he won't work with anybody if the upper management doesn't want to even sit in on a few of the sessions.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's brilliant, because it is exactly that. It's, where does true leadership come from? It should come from the top, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And those leaders should be getting guidance themselves. Like, none of us can do this on your own. I have a coach. Coaches have coaches. Like, we don't do this on our own, and we don't. Otherwise, we get stuck. We hit our ceiling, and we can only do what we can do. And what coaching does is it brings that outside view, right? You get someone that's looking from the outside in and can, in the right way, point it out, address it, challenge, prod, keep accountable, all the things that help us grow as leaders and help your team grow. So like when I was leading teams in my previous job, one of the things I loved to do was to recognize who had leadership potential, and as they were part of the team, try and pull that potential out of them and raise up more leaders, because leaders will become, like team will become leaders, and they will become your managers, and they will step into higher responsibility as your company or your organization grows. Like, if we're wanting to grow, you always need to be working on yourself. And so if a top level leader doesn't want to work on themselves, but they expect their team to, bit of a red flag.
A big time. So here's a situation. I had 3 leaders, and they were really, really good. They still are, actually. And I would have them all in a position of leadership. But one thought he was better than the others. And he actually was. But because I gave them all the same challenge, he felt that he did not have to shine like he does normally. So what he started doing is that he started doing less. Because when the other ones did less, I paid more attention to them, because they needed extra coaching. So what wound up happening is, he, instead of saying, wow, I'm doing really good, I don't need this coaching down here, I need coaching up here. So what he did is he wanted the attention. So he brought himself down, and now he goes, oh yeah, now I get fixed on stuff I already know. But why?
Yeah.
Because he wanted recognition. But meanwhile, he was being recognized. But he didn't realize that what he needed to do was level up in order to get that higher training. But he kept himself down because he wanted a pat on the back. And if you're doing a good job, I'm not going to go, great job, great job, great job, great job, great job. I'm going to say, I really appreciate what you're doing. Keep doing it. And now I'm going to go help these other guys or these other girls so they can level up, so they can catch up to you. But what happened is, he saw it the negative way. He saw the negativity out of it. So I've handled it. And now, once in a while, I'll have him teach or coach the ones that need my help. So now he sees himself as a better leader. But because he was never put in that position, he felt like he had to lower his standards almost, if you will.
Yeah. It is really important as a leader. And this comes into that knowing your team. So first of all, to address that appreciation issue, there's research and stats that show that is one of the main reasons why someone will leave a position, is because they're not feeling like they're being appreciated or recognized for what they've contributed. Above rewards and money and all that kind of stuff, people need to feel like they are valued. But the tricky thing is that everybody feels valued in different ways. So we've got have you heard of the 5 love languages? I'm sure you have. So you've got your words of affirmation, your physical touch, time, gifts, something else. Anyway, those love languages, they work in the workplace as well. When we recognize people, so not everybody appreciates a gift. And so rewarding them with gifts might make them go, oh, thanks. But what I actually want is some time. I just want you to chat with me about my personal life for 5 minutes. or
Yeah.
just sort of touch on the shoulder to say, hi, I'm here, I see you. Like, we've all got different ways that we receive that appreciation. And actually, one of the best ways to recognize that is to watch what they do. How are they really lavish with their words of positivity? Do they love buying gifts for people? And that's how we can recognize how our individual team members will feel appreciated. And so that's one thing that you brought up there. But the other one is recognizing that potential. Like, if somebody's got potential in them, don't let it sit there. And especially when they're hesitant, draw it out. Like, absolutely draw it out. And yeah, I love that you gave him the opportunity to teach and coach, because if he's operating at a higher level, then you've got to recognize it. And that's a really great way to do that, is to pull them into a leadership position. And especially if everyone can see it, like if somebody is operating at a different level and they are a good leader, if we as their leader don't recognize that and draw them up, everyone can see that. And they're like, well, is it worth it? Like he did, he pulled himself back. Is it worth putting in the effort? Is it worth working hard? Is it worth showing my leadership qualities with no result? So yeah, absolutely, giving people responsibility is a really great way to show appreciation for someone's efforts.
Yeah, without a doubt. I've also put people in leadership positions that I see how potential they are, their potential. And I see, without them necessarily being in that leadership position yet, helping other people.
Yeah.
But something
Yes.
changes in them the minute they're given the responsibility. Pressure, fear, anxiety sets into somebody who becomes a leader. So now they think they have to change who they are. So I put a young lady in a leadership position. She became mean. She became kind of mean to people. And I was like, whoa, I had to stop her. I said, you're so sweet. You're so nice. Why are you being like this? Well, I need them to do. I'm like, no, that's not. Remember how you were helping people before you got into this position? Do you remember how nice you were? I said, don't lose that, because then you're not being a leader anymore. And then she's like, I'm like that? I'm like, somehow something changed in you. I said, let's go back to who you were, because that's the person I put in a leadership position, not this new person. This new person scares me. So sometimes it's recognizing.
But you addressed
right?
it.
Yeah, it's recognizing.
But you addressed it, and that's
correct. It's also, like I said, a lot of people are great leaders, but when they're put in that pedestal, if you will, what winds up happening is they feel that they have to change who they are. They feel like that they have the fear of failure, right? They have the fear of not only just failure, but of pleasing people, whether they're people pleaser or not. And then they also have the anxiety of performance anxiety. So all those things start to fall into place. And I believe that's one of the things, that when we start to take somebody into a leadership position, what winds up, and you said it earlier, people just get put into that position and nobody holds their hand. Nobody guides them through this whole process.
Yeah. And that's, again, it's the leader's responsibility. So their leader, whoever's put them in that position, it's their responsibility to support, guide, train, encourage, hold them while they're learning. Like, nobody falls into a position and nails it straight away. I've seen it pop up recently quite a lot. Is like, we've got to try and fail to get good. Like, we don't automatically be good at something new. We have to try and we have to fail. And the fact that you addressed that attitude change in that young lady and said, I've noticed something different. and addressing that mindset of you don't have to be any different to who you were. You just have a different level of responsibility. That's great leadership. That's good training. And that's what we need to provide people. And feedback, being able to give and receive feedback, that's a massive culture thing that needs to stay as part of what you do, is the ability to receive feedback and the ability to give feedback in a healthy and productive way. To say, just notice you've changed a little bit, and that's something that we need to address. It's really important to do that. It's really important to create the space to do that and create that safe space. And I think that mindset shift can sometimes come from the example they're given as well. So I'm not saying in your position that was going on, but sometimes the example that we see in our leaders, they behave a certain way, and sometimes with no context, then we try to copy that behavior, but it doesn't work the same. I've seen that too, where I lead a certain way because of my personality, but I also lead a certain way because of the relationship I've built with my team. So I personally spend a lot of time talking with my team people, my team members, to get to know them and know what's going on in their life. And I know how they respond to fairly direct leadership, or I know how they respond to stressful situations and what I need to do to support them. But someone that's watching me might go, oh, I can do that same thing with that person, but they don't have that level of relationship, so it doesn't work. So that's also like when you're training up leaders, you've got to train them to develop the relationships with their team if they want to lead the way that you do, if that makes sense.
It makes 1,000% sense. Yes, it does. It does. You know, it's very interesting that I recently had a conversation. I had about 5 leaders I was talking to, and I was telling them that I'm different than they are. And I was sharing how unique they are. And then one of the higher leaders later on had a conversation with me, and they said, I appreciate the conversation on how you let all of us know that we're unique, that we're not you, and we should not necessarily do everything the way you do it, because the way you do it is way different than how we do it. And what she said to me was that she truly appreciated that conversation because it brought different light to her. It allowed her not only to see some of the people she was leading, but to allow her to even treat them as unique, as different, and even everyone as an individual, even though we're all part of, or they were part of a collaboration, and they were doing teamwork, yet each one brought different strengths. Each one had a different way of communicating. So for her to come and say something to me, I think that the message came across really well. So that was a good thing, right? Because everyone in the team is different and should be different, because like I said before, if everybody has the same exact job, unless you're all, everybody's gonna, you're working on a car and everybody just has to change tires, that's easy. But if somebody has to work on the engine, somebody has to work on the brakes, somebody has to work on the carburetor, whatever it is, we all have different roles, right? But we're all part of a team. I'm thinking of a professional car driver. As a professional car driver, he has his earphones on because they're telling him how the road is turning out, if the weather's changing, if somebody's is coming behind them, all these different things. Watch for the turn coming. But then when they pull into the pit stop, there's a whole different team to help the car. They're not there to help the driver, because they're not asking him, do you need a drink? Are you feeling tired? They're not doing that. Their job is to make sure the car's functioning right. So even though they're all
Yes.
part of the
Yeah.
same team, each one has a different role, right? So I think that
Absolutely.
we need to understand the roles of each individual.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting balance also. You've got different roles within your team, you've got different roles as leaders and different teams that you're leading and stuff like that. But you've also got, I love studying generations. So I've done a fair bit of looking into Gen Z, post millennials, and how they see the world and how different it is to previous generations. And a big difference is the desire for collaboration. Whereas I, what I've learnt in my teenage years and growing up in different jobs is that you do your job, you get it done. Yes, we're a team, but you do your job, you get it done. You don't necessarily expect everyone to come along for the ride. Whereas there's this a different mindset that's coming through these generations of we do this together. And so there's got to be a good mix of that, because we can't just do everything together. That doesn't work either. I've seen that play out in certain situations, and it's like the young guys sitting there going, but I want to do it all together, and the older ones of us sitting there going, let us just do our job, go away. It's just like you've got to find a healthy balance of that team collaboration, and that's often around your goals and working out how you're moving forward together and each of your roles and responsibilities and how you can support each other. Because even in our different roles and our different things that we're doing, we all can contribute. And that's where having healthy and really productive team meetings really comes into play and shows how the team can work together and support each other. And today we might be looking at the car and looking how the functionality of the organisation needs to be adjusted and fixed. But this time, this team goes, actually, the driver's not healthy. Let's look at what we need to do on a personal level within the people in the team. Like the collaboration is so powerful, and I actually really love that about the upcoming generations, is that they want to do it together, because together we work together better. Like we bring our different strengths and we can see things differently. And when we isolate ourselves and just go, no, this is my job and this is how I do it, we stunt our growth, really. That's the gist of it.
Yeah. And sometimes there is that forefront, that person that's representing the whole team. And for example, a car driver, right? If he loses, they only blame him. They don't blame his team, right? Same thing for a jockey,
Yeah.
right? If a jockey loses, they blame. Whoops, there's a finger that went. If a jockey goes on a race and they lose, it's the jockey that gets blamed, not the horse, the jockey, not the team that helped make sure the horse is good, not the veteran, who's been coaching him. His coaches don't get blamed
Yeah.
for whatever, right? A baseball, the only time sometimes coaches get blamed is when it's a professional uh, sports team. They'll blame the coach
Team
a
sports,
lot of
yeah.
times, or they'll blame a specific player because maybe he made a mistake. One mistake.
Yeah.
Everybody made mistakes, but it was the one that everybody remembers. They get the blame, right?
Yeah.
So we have to consider that we're not talking about necessarily a sports team, but we're talking about people who are coming together
Yeah.
to function as one, right? So we all take the blame. We
Yeah.
all but here's the thing, a
Yeah.
lot of times people only one person gets the award, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the whole team should have gotten the award. So there's a lot that goes into having a great team, and also recognizing, maybe not in the media or in the forefront, but together saying, hey, listen, even though John was awarded for our collective work, then we have to celebrate each person in the team, right? So that they don't lose
Yes.
focus
Yeah.
moving forward, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's that leader responsibility thing that we talked about earlier, is like, yes, you've got the leader and they are held responsible in the public eye or within the company even. And when things go wrong, then often that one person gets a blame, and or if something goes right, they get the recognition. But when we have that team mindset, like you're saying, recognizing, celebrating, addressing issues as well. So like if something goes wrong, yes, they need to take responsibility, but the team members also have to take responsibility. Like what can we do better next? Like failures and things that go wrong are great hindsight to learn from. If things go wrong and we fail and we don't learn from them and do something different the next time, then that's a waste. But we can always make it a success by learning from it. We can do something different next time. Evaluation, feedback, all those things are so important for continuing to grow and continuing to do better, because failure is going to happen. Things are going to go wrong. So what do we do about it? What do we do with that?
Yeah, yeah. Sarah, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for being here with me. By the way, at the bottom of the screen, you're looking at Sarah's YouTube video, YouTube channel. Go to her YouTube channel. This way you can connect with her. Take a look. And she's a great coach. Obviously, you heard it here. And there's so much that you bring to the table, that you help leaders
Thank you.
understand not only their role, but the role of their team that they're leading, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with me today.
It's all about people. It's been great.
Absolutely.
It's been great. Wonderful. It's been a really, really great conversation. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Have yourself an exceptional rest of your day. Take care, everybody. See you next time.